This off-meta build one-taps any boss in the game, speed runs pit 100 plus, deals trillions upon trillions of damage. It's insanely fun, and it has a sword the size of Jupiter. It's Zenith baby, and it's back once again, but this time, it's fucking insane. We recently covered this build on the channel by Lord Sora, but we have since then made substantial improvements to the build. So substantial, in fact, that the footage you're seeing here is still in pretty crappy gear and no good sanctifications, meaning, once decked out, this build is easily pushing into the pit 120s. And for an off-meta build that's likely the most fun build in the entire game, that's pretty goddamn impressive. So with that said, let's cover everything you need to get this build online, how it works, and how to play it. After you've dropped a sub to Lord Sora, that is, because man deserved it after cooking this thing up. Okay, so first things first. How does the build function? Well, it's a Zenith build, meaning we are dealing damage solely from an ultimate skill. And if you know ultimate skills, you know that ultimate skills deal a fuckton of damage. But they also come with some issues, the main one being, how the hell do you actually make them spammable? Well, since Sora has like 5,000 hours playing Bloodwave, another ultimate skill should be right up his alley. And indeed, it is. The first thing we're doing to solve this is getting Sermon of Steel. Using this, the skill is now spammable for 4 seconds. And spamming Zenith extends this duration. Here's something lovely about the extended duration part. Zenith's damage, along with several of our multipliers, scales even further with attack speed. So guess what we'll be doing in this build? Correct. We will be scaling as much attack speed as possible. And the more attack speed, the more Zenith strikes. And the more Zenith strikes, the more we can extend this duration, basically allowing us to keep spamming it indefinitely. But sadly, there are times when we lose this capability. For example, when running somewhere or when we're picking our nose. Suddenly, the skill is on cooldown. What do we do then? Uninstall? Either that, or we stack cooldown reduction as well. Doing this and combining our cooldown reduction with stacking auras and the Resplendence glyph, we can just reset the entire cooldown right back to 0 when we need it. Easy peasy. And once the cooldown of Zenith is solved, all we need to do is scale our damage and defenses as high as possible. Let's see how we do that, shall we? For starters, we have our skills. As we talked about, the auras are there to remove the Zenith cooldown in cases where we fuck up. We do, however, also get healing from Holy Light Aura, armor, and resistances from Defiance Aura, and perhaps most importantly, a lot of attack speed from Fanaticism Aura. And this attack speed is in Cap 2, where we don't really have any other attack speed. We then have Aegis, which is going to generate resolve stacks for us, for 20% damage reduction, Falling Star for weakened, for another 20% damage reduction, along with mobility, of course, and finally, our Oath. Zealot is a no-brainer, as we're going to benefit not only from the Oath itself, but we can also utilize a lot of additional aspects using this. Alright, now when it comes to the gear, there are some things you need to prioritize hard. First thing being cooldown reduction. Around 50 to 60% is absolutely fine. If you can't reach this, then you may want to consider using Flicker Step sneakers instead to reset the cooldown of Zenith. Your next prio is attack speed. Let's bring up the buckets again. You want 100% in the first attack speed bucket. For this build, we have access to attack speed on gear, the Perragons, and the Elixir of Advantage. It's possible to get around 45% from the Perragons, but in that case, you need a max-leveled glyph. Either way, though, you're going to need around 55% attack speed on your gear to solve this attack speed bucket for a total of 100%, or use an Elixir of Advantage. To do this, you want to masterwork, and ideally also have a GA attack speed on your gloves and rings, as this should solve it with ease. Then, for your third prio, crit chance. A lot of your multipliers come from crit chance, but as long as you get an Air of Perdition, it's easy as hell to cap. And if you get a perfect Air, then you don't need any crit chance on your remaining pieces. Other than those priorities though, you just stack strength and armor like in literally any other Paladin build, and you should be hitting for trillions. Alright, let's check out the gear pieces one by one. For the Air of Perdition, you don't need it, but it's a big damage bonus and it solves your crit chance. If you don't have any mythics, don't worry, you can just go to the starters section. For runes, we grab Ahu and Cax for giga damage. It will drain your resources though, so to get them back up, we use Zan and Lum in our chest. And speaking of chest, Shroud of False Death is just insane. The Paladin has access to the best passive tree in the game, so that +1 to passives is beyond broken, along with getting a lot of all stats, instantly solving the entire Perragon tree. For gloves, we slap on the Revelator's aspect for 65% damage, as we're going to get further stacks from our oath. Then, make sure you get attack speed, either with GA or Masterworked. After that, it's all about stacking good stuff like cooldown reduction, strength and armor here and everywhere else. Also, aura cooldown reduction will make it way easier to reset your zenith cooldown, allowing you to spam your auras more frequently. Remember though, if you don't have a perfect Air of Perdition, that is one without 45% crit chance, then you need a crit chance roll here instead of the cooldown reduction. Because that's exactly how much crit chance you're going to need on your gear. On the pantaloons, the Indomitable aspect is beyond broken, granting us 140% armor. Yummers. And why armor? Well, if you don't know this by now, you've been snoozing through every build guide on the internet. Because coat of arms in combination with castle is why this class is like 20 pit tiers above all the other classes. Basically, armor is your best friend, along with strength, as this also increases your armor and damage, of course. This is also why we temper on guard everywhere, simply because it increases our armor. For our sneakers, the Wild Bolt aspect grants us a slight damage increase, but you can use any mobility aspect if you want to fly through content. In any case, the usual stats here, in combination with some movement speed. When it comes to our weapon, this is one of the main reasons we need to get crit capped, because as long as you get crit capped, you're getting at the lowest a 2x multiplier from this all the time, excluding the lucky hit to double it and the insanely good passives on this thing. But it all relies on you critically hitting. For the offhand, we want to focus on chance for Zenith to deal double damage as much as possible. This is by far the most important, boosting your damage like crazy. Other than that, get cooldown reduction and damage reduction, followed by slamming on as much strength and armor as possible, along with the apogeic Fura aspect for some lovely damage. When it comes to the amulet, unless you swipe, you most likely won't be able to get this kind of an amulet. But just know that pretty much any combination of passive skills are insane for the Paladin. Combine that with some cooldown reduction, and you've got yourself a fantastic amulet. We then slap on the Zealot's Covenant aspect and head on over to the rings. Here we're going for the usual again, attack speed, strength, max life, and cooldown reduction. But there are two things here you can't miss. The first one being Zenith cooldown reduction tempers, but perhaps more importantly, a lucky hit chance to make enemies vulnerable, as this will be your sole way of getting vulnerable up. Other than that, slap on the Jacques Fervor aspect for more crit damage, 80%, as we'll have 4 fervor stacks, 3 from the Oath, and 1 more from Zealot's Covenant, and then go for the Virtuous aspect for some extra damage after you use your Falling Star and Aegis. Great job, friends. Gear complete. If you've got any questions, just drop them in the comments and I'll ignore them, and we'll check out the skill tree next. The basic skills are getting one of these. Spoilers though, my next build guide may or may not revolve around one of these skills, but for now, grab some passive skills along with our lovely auras. Fanaticism for attack speed. In attack speed bucket 2, remember, along with some crit chance and crit damage. We grab Defiance Aura for armor and resistances, along with 10% damage as long as we have resolve stacks, which we'll get from Aegis here. We also have Holy Light Aura for an additional cooldown reduction source. After that, we grab some passives, along with Falling Star for mobility and a source of Weakened. In the Justice Tree, all we want is a big, sticky load of passives. Pretty much any combination of these will be insanely good to have on your amulet. Then, in the Ultimate Tree, we find some additional great passives, along with our lovely Zenith. Max it out, obviously, and grab Sermon of Steel as to make it spammable. And finally, Coat of Arms, as this will be the strongest one as long as you're stacking armor, which you will due to the Perragons. And speaking of the Perragons, let's check it out, shall we? Playing a Zealot build does have some interesting Perragon nodes that the meta builds do not, but starting us off, we're grabbing the typical stuff. Outmatch grants us a big chunk of damage and boosts our rare nodes. We follow that up with Castle, which is the best node in the entire game by far, and slot in Feverous for a buttload of damage. Then when it comes to the rare and magic nodes, grab these only after you've unlocked all of the legendary nodes and glyphs, and make sure to prioritize the best ones like armor, max life, etc. before dumping points all over the place. Then, in the Relentless board, we grab this lovely node for 80% damage and cooldown reduction. Just make sure you're moving at least every 2 seconds to keep it up. After that, Socket Spirit for a large chunk of critical damage. In the Fervent board, we have this lovely node. Using this, we have yet another source of crit chance and a massive crit damage multiplier. Since we have Fervor stacks, we get 32% from this one, making it easy to cap crit chance. And finally, Preacher, which is another way of scaling damage via attack speed, along with Resplendence, which we need to reset our Zenith cooldown. And having it here greatly boosts our attack speed as well, making it easy to cap it in the first attack speed bucket, and it also grants us a lot of max life, allowing us to not fucking die Lmayo. Hey, will you look at that, Perragons complete? Let's check out some goodies and then I'll teach you how to play the build after that. The first goodie being the Divine Gifts. Here, we go with Anguish for the Andariel gift only if you need the movement speed. If you have any issues with defenses whatsoever, then you go for Screams here. For the Asmodean buff, we go for armor because armor equals big damn equals big dick. Belial lies, but he does give us some fortify, so we grab that. And finally, the fat green fuck, where we grab Pain for a Hail Mary barrier if needed. When it comes to the reinforcements, we want Raher for the fortify, armor, damage reduction, and increased damage. And for reinforcement, either go with Oldkin for the damage reduction or the Cannibal with Bloodthirst if you're not attack speed capped yet. And with that, we're finally done with this shit. Let's see how one plays this magnificent build now, shall we? Fortunate for you, bunch of goddamn dummies, playing the build is easier than theory crafting it. So easy, in fact, that it's officially Dad Gamer approved. So this is what you do. You press the Zenith skill, and then you press it again, and again, and when you can't press it no more, that is when it's on cooldown for one reason or another, you just press your auras to reset the cooldown, and then you repeat. For mobility, you also have your Falling Star, but it's also your source of Weakened, so if you ever struggle with defense, then you can just use it on top of your enemies, and you'll gain an additional 20% damage reduction. But other than that, you just hold down the Zenith button and enjoy your trillions of damage. Alright folks, that's all for this one. Drop a sub to me and Sora, and I'll see you in the next one.
So long, gay boys!